did that, and as soon as I moved to New York, she dumped me. Which is like lesson learned, young man. But I was in New York. I got there. Like I got there on my own, and I had experience enough that as a freelance photo assistant, I could get a lot of work. Because once somebody hired me once, it would be like, well, we'll take you on for a day for free. And if, you know, because this is very much an apprenticeship thing. This is New York in the 90s. This is a very intensive photo environment. You hustle or you die, like that kind of thing. And once I got hired, people really liked me and really liked working with me. And a really big established photographer who was an alumni of Syracuse University, Eric Miola, who had interviewed me before and really liked me and offered me a job before I moved there. He kept hiring me as a freelancer and was like, I want you to come on full time. I want you to come on full time. And I'm like, I don't want to be a full time assistant. It's great. I'm in New York City. I'm in my 20s. It's the 90s. I'm having a blast, dude. I mean, I get to travel and work with all these different crews and have fun. It was an amazing time. But eventually the deal got nicer and better. And it wasn't a full-time photo assistant. It was a studio manager. So then I became a studio manager for Eric Miola, who is this huge established advertising photographer in New York and really known for his color stuff. And he was still doing a lot of color and photography work with like duping stations and different enlargers set up next to each other and using filters on things. And he was just getting into Photoshop like at that time, because this is the early 90s and it's starting to come of age and a lot more photographers are learning to use it. I loved photography effects because I was a movie kid, you know, and I loved special effects and Ray Harryhausen, miniatures in front, and I loved all that stuff. And I loved learning how to do it and pull it off. So at first I was a little resistant to the computer, but once I worked for Eric and took the job, he kept making the offer better and better. So I took it. And I became studio manager there. He had like the top people come in and train me kind of in Photoshop. And it was like, I was telling you, Chris, when we talked the first time, I was like, yeah, I started on 2. And I remember when 2.5 came out in Photoshop, and it was just this revolution of like, oh my God, things are really changing. And I got into Photoshop a lot then. And I started developing my own style and look in photography using digital, but still using the same effects and sort of practical stuff that I loved, that I kind of studied in school. And, you know, I was happy to leave the lab behind because, you know, working in a dark room and stuff, it's not really that much fun. It's more glamorous in movies than it is in real life. But I really developed my own look. And part of my deal with Eric to take the full-time job there was like, I have access to the studio whenever you're not in there, and you have to pay for my film processing. Any of the stuff that I'm going to spend of your expendables and inventory, you're just going to cover that. That's what you're going to do for me to take the job. And he accepted that. Once he saw sort of how much I was working there on the weekends, he was kind of like, oh man, this is a lot, Phil. I mean, do you really need to shoot that much stuff? And it's like, hey dude, this is the deal you made. And, you know, I built a portfolio out of that. And there were people that worked with us because Eric is a wonderful artist and photographer, but I was more personable with the clients and the art directors and stuff. So I ended up getting a lot of play with them. And if there was something he didn't want to do, they'd be like, hey, Eric, would it be cool if Phil did, you know, worked on this with us? And I started building a book that way and got some recognition. And eventually I left Eric Miola's studio and started out kind of on my own. And I did a lot of editorial work, which was still very big back then. So I did, you know, magazine covers and fashion stories and music stuff. I did stuff for AP, Alternative Press. I did a ton of stuff for them. I did stuff for like Complex, and, you know, there were Herb, the LA magazine Herb, URB. And that got me into like more and more sort of music industry stuff at first, but also a mix of music and fashion editorial that was different because there weren't a lot of people doing these. I mean, I was doing fashion stories that looked like Blade Runner, like totally illustrated Blade Runner cityscape craziness stuff. And that started getting me more and more attention. And I developed a style that eventually led me to become a very big commercial advertising photographer. There was There was a big lull when 9/11 happened in New York because I was there. I was just married, and it the work dried up for a while, and I used that time kind of to develop some different techniques and different styles that once the work started coming back in, I started using those, and I got the attention of like Mark Echo. I did a bunch of Echo Unlimited campaigns that were national. And then I did, Mark Echo introduced me to the owner of Skechers. And then I did a bunch of ubiquitous Skechers campaigns that were, I was the agency and the photographer and the design studio with my entire team of artists who I had hired at that time, because I had a staff by this point. I had a staff. I was paying for health insurance and all the legit stuff that you do when you get really big. And I had a billboard in Times Square at one point, from Skechers. It was crazy. It was sort of a dream come true, but I realized at that time that it wasn't really what my dream was. Like, I hadn't really reached what I wanted to do. Like, I could see that it was affecting my relationship. I could see that staying in the hustle and doing advertising was not fulfilling me creatively. And I felt like I could do more than sell Skechers knockoff sneakers to people. Like, I didn't want my work to like amount to that, and that's that. Because I mean, I have a subversive streak in me, but I don't begrudge anyone who makes a living from working in advertising. I was just realizing it wasn't for me, and I was getting really about it, and my health was suffering. My marriage broke up. Like, it was just too much work and too much pressure, and it kind of imploded, and I was like, I know I'm making a ton of money, but I'd rather not. And like, I'd rather do something that it wasn't that I'd rather not make money. It was that I'd rather do something that I felt good about and that satisfied me creatively. And I didn't want to keep doing what I was doing, because as far as I was concerned, it had ruined a lot of things. And there wasn't anything that I felt better about doing. And I couldn't see myself doing it for another 10 years. Because at this point, I'm in my mid 30s. And I was like, you know what? It's time that I make that movie that I've always been wanting to make. And I want, now that I've been divorced and I have some experience in life and a heartbreak and all these other things, but what those teachers told me in college started coming back. Like, write about what you experience and what you know, and through your own lens. And that's how I wrote my first short film, The Listening Dead. At that time, I still had the money from the photography career to put a lot of money into this short film. It was a 15-minute short film. It cost a ton, but we were on location. We did a lot of effects. We had miniatures. I was so proud of it when it was done, and it actually told a story of a married couple of artists whose relationship broke up, but as a silent film, as a black and white film, very visual, as a metaphor for the fact that by the end, me and my wife weren't really hearing each other. We weren't communicating. It was just a bad time because there was so much pressure with the business that I was running. And that kind of just opened all these new doors for me. It was like a short film that went out, and I had the money to promote it then too and go to film festivals. I traveled all over with it. I really felt like I had come of age. Like, I was like, this is where I should have been a long time ago. I should have committed to this much earlier. Like, what have I done with my life? That kind of thing. But it was really fantastic. At the same time, I turned around and made another short film right after that.
Thanks for checking out another episode of Origins, A Creative Journey, a DesignerCon podcast. Please follow and subscribe on whatever platform you're streaming this on, and check us out on Instagram at Origins, A Creative Journey. And if you have any suggestions or questions or comments, email us at deconpodcast@gmail.com. And make sure to get your tickets and hotel deals now for DesignerCon's 20th anniversary celebration in Las Vegas, Nevada, November 14th through 16th, 2025. I hope to see you there, but in the meantime, go make some art.